Let me ask you, Matt, when did you meet Renzo though? Like, so obviously by this time he's in your corner kind of thing. Like how was the actual meeting and you jiu-jitsu's for me?
The first time I met him might have been a seminar at that same Bama place. But that's not when he was in my corner, but I met him. He did a seminar there once. And that's when I think I was already training with Craig Kukuk. Craig Kukuk this is what happened. Craig Kukuk was with the Gracie family in Torrance and Horian and them, and he got his black belt from them. He went to Brazil. He was training with Elio and Hoyler, and then he got kicked out from them for some business dealings. Horian and Kukuk were probably a little bit alike, and they had some business problems. So I used to be on something called the Gracie newsletter. I was, I guess, 17 years old. So he used to say, "Oh, we're promoting our first American black belt, Craig Kukuk." And then like the next newsletter was like a couple months later, "Oh, we kicked out Craig Kukuk." I'm like, look, they couldn't erase this dude's knowledge, you know what I mean? And I found out they took it away. He doesn't hold the standards of a black belt. Meanwhile, the week before he was fucking whatever. So I found out that dude was training in a class in Manhattan, in like the Village, in this judo club, Oishi's Judo, 1 day a week in Manhattan, back in early 90s. I forgot exactly when. But Renzo came in 96, so this is probably 94 or 93 or something. And I was only there 1 day a week, and then I would get another day. I'd go to New Jersey and like drive a couple hours to Red Bank, New Jersey to get a private lesson with the guy. It wasn't available back then. There was no internet. There was no way you could just learn without getting an individual to teach you, you know? And it's not like now where there's a jiu-jitsu school in every other block, or, you know what I mean? There was nobody on the East Coast but Steve Maxwell. That guy was in Philadelphia under the Gracies. And then this guy, Craig Kukuk. Eventually, he started coming 3 days a week to the city. 2 years later, Renzo Gracie shows up, and he shows up at the in-school tournament where all the students that were already there had a big, and Craig had a school in Jersey at the time, and they'd all come together for this little in-school tournament. And it was kind of a way of welcoming Renzo, and it was the Gracie Kukuk Academy on 27th Street in Manhattan. And that was, I'll never forget, because I competed there, and I got something on tape somewhere. And I remember Renzo seeing me and just like shaking his head, like watching. Because I submitted maybe 3 out of the 4 guys or whatever it was. It was weird because they were all either training partners or from the other school in New Jersey. But I got this tiny little medal first place. It was a tiny little thing, but it was the only thing I ever won in my life because I never competed.
Wow.
Besides like a wrestling match here and there as a kid. And I remember being like, and I remember asking my other buddy there, I'm like, "Yo, who do you got next?" And this guy, Dave, and he was a nice guy, correctional. He's like, "Man, I don't really take this seriously, this and that." And I remember being so serious about it. And he saw me get a little bit like, not offended, but a little, he goes, "Oh, but it's cool that you're into it." But I'm like, and then I won that fucking thing. And I'm glad I was so into it because fuck, look where, I mean, you know what I mean? Like other people treat it like a hobby and this and that. I'm like, yo, this is something else, man. I just fell in love with jiu-jitsu so early on, and the fact, and I don't know, that was my college. You know what I mean? That's where I was right out of high school.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.